This is Story Robot. Welcome to r/RegularRevenge. Our first story of today is, Fire Me for No Reason, I'll Get Half the Store Fired. When I was around 20 years old, I ended up getting a job at a game store that I always wanted to work at, and it was a job I truly loved. The pay was average, but the work and people, majority, were fun to work with. I was super close with the manager and we got along really well. Most employees were casuals, but she always gave me the most hours when she needed someone. Sadly, about 2 years into the job, a new manager was coming to replace her, as she was being moved into a bigger store. Unfortunately, this new manager had a horrible reputation. So, I wasn't really looking forward to it. But, I tried to see the silver lining in most things and thought I could get along with her and make it work. So, I began working with her on a few shifts here and there, and she didn't seem that bad. She seemed quite nice actually. She was fairly warm to me and would always buy me drinks and sometimes give me money for lunch out of her own pocket. All seemed well, and I wasn't entirely sure where her bad reputation originated. All was well in my mind. However, with saying that, there was something off about her and she had a cunning aura. It's hard to put into words. Just some quick backstory before I get right into the nitty-gritty details. I was very good at my job and was one of the better performing employees. My KPIs were usually the highest in the store, and I always ranked top 10 in the state, month after month. However, there was one specific worker this didn't get very well with, as he was super competitive and extremely arrogant. Let's call him Douche. Douche and, let's call her new manager for simplicity's sake, became very close. I wasn't sure how or why at this point, but it happened. They would be rude and arrogant towards the other employees at times and just straight up disgusting at other times. I remember Douche used to piss in the sink that was in the storeroom, instead of going to the toilet which was literally 30 meters away. The whole back room would stink like piss as the tap didn't work. Which means he always had penis-infested hands as he wouldn't have been able to wash them. Now that I'm writing this, I realize how disturbing that actually is. Yikes. Around the same time a new assistant manager rolled in. At the time, he seemed okay. I didn't really deal with him that much, to be fair. This is where it gets interesting. One day, as I was cleaning up a shelf near the storeroom door, I pick up on a few voices radiating through. It's the infamous three: Douche, new manager and new assistant manager. The voices are muffled, so I leant my ears against the door. I remember making out the words, "Just put them in your bag. They never check the cameras." And Douche promptly replied with, "Seriously? At my old job, they checked them all the time." And I can't remember which manager replied with, "Honestly, the only person that'll ever check is the area managers, but they're never here." Something along those lines anyway. I was super suspicious and I knew they were doing something dodgy, but I went about the rest of my shift like nothing happened. It didn't have anything to do with me, those were my honest thoughts at the time. Anyway, some time passes. Douche is still a douche, new manager is becoming more hostile as the weeks and months go on. She is no longer nice to me and treats almost all the employees like trash. She is honestly horrible at this point and I now understand where her reputation had come from. For those wondering why she may have been so nice at first, I guess she was just trying to hide her true nature and come off as this elegant queen so the employees like her. I don't really know though, to be fair, seems super psychotic now that I think back on it. Anyway, one shift, I show up late to work. It was a shift with just me and the new assistant manager. I was about 15 minutes late due to a car accident on one of the roads I take. It was completely out of my control. Keep in mind, in the 2 years I worked at this place, I had only been late twice. Once because the shift planner gave me the wrong starting time and once because of the said reason mentioned above. New assistant manager says to me, as I show up, "You're later, but don't worry, I won't tell new manager, as she really hates people that are late." I reply with something like, "Sorry, there was a car accident, couldn't do anything about it." After that, I get on with my shift and completely forget about the situation. The very next day, I had a shift and as I show up, new manager calls me aside for a chat in the storeroom. I'll cut to the chase. She fired me for being late and tells me they don't have any time for people that aren't reliable. I also realized, obviously, that new assistant manager had told her, as there's no other way for her to have known, as there's no clock on or clock off system. At the time, you just showed up for your shift and everyone assumed you were just there. Fairly archaic system for 2014, now that I think about it. Anyway, I leave in a foul mood and I am obviously extremely annoyed, as the area manager had told me 2 or 3 months prior that I would more than likely be offered a manager's position in the coming months, due to how well I work and how good my results were. A manager position would mean a permanent full-time job and more money. This was mentioned to me just before the new manager had arrived. Anyway, I still remember Douche's smug look as I left the store. Still makes me angry thinking about it. I called the union, talked to my old manager and even to the area manager. Sadly, there wasn't anything anyone could do, as I only had a casual position. I was, essentially, disposable to the company. This didn't fly with me. I guess you now know where this story is going. I remembered back to the little conversation that I overheard coming from the storeroom. But, it was a while ago. I can't remember exactly how much time had passed between me getting fired and that conversation, but I assume it was no more than a month. It wouldn't have been much longer, as I know our cameras were set to a 2-month cycle. Which, essentially means, the footage gets recorded over every 2 months. I eventually remembered which day it was and around what time I had overheard them. I promptly called the area manager to tell him the conversation I had overheard and on which day. He immediately launched an investigation, as stock had been going missing from that store ever since the new manager had arrived. But, supposedly the new manager and douche were blaming me the whole time behind my back, saying I was doing things that were fishy. I had no idea of this. The area manager called me a few days later and told me that he had gone over the cameras and witnessed all 3 of them, new manager, douche and new assistant manager, piling games and merchandise into bags. They were stealing hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of stock. He also promptly fired them on the spot and they were charged with stealing, and had to pay back, what I assume is, a lot of money. All 3 of them, gone in one hit. The 3 worst people. I had a smile that went from ear to ear. I also got my job given back to me and was eventually promoted to the manager position that I wanted. I worked my way up to an area manager and was with the company up until 2019. I think it was around 2017 that I came across the new manager working at a coffee shop, making coffees. She served me, and I was in the company uniform. The look on her face, when she saw me, was priceless. I think that's when she must have realized. It was this beep that got us all fired. I wonder if she's found a way to steal the coffee beans and create a little posse that would do it with her. I think that's maybe why she was so nice to me at first actually. She wanted me to be a part of her posse, but when she realized I wasn't a scumbag like the other 2, she gave up and became hostile. That's just my theory anyway. Still super psychotic regardless. I have no idea what douche and the new assistant manager are doing, but I hope they're doing horribly. Our final story of today is, my grandma was a horrible person and a worse driver. I made sure she lost her license. Grandma was a monster, let's leave it at that. She was cruel, and sometimes violent, to our entire family and even her friends. Grandma also happened to be the world's worst driver. She would hit parked cars and drive off without leaving a note, litter out the window, very illegal here in California, and generally drive like a psycho. Grandma refused to see a doctor. She had a mortal fear of being institutionalized, for good reason. So when she had some physical problems, she wouldn't get them treated. She was driving around with one hand and couldn't really turn her head to look around either. Mom set up grocery delivery, etc., but Grandma wouldn't give up driving voluntarily. Well, California has a law on the books that allows anyone to report a dangerous driver to the DMV and request a re-examination. It exists because so many people like me have relatives who are no longer physically and/or mentally fit to drive, and we may not be able to make them stop on their own. You can request to remain anonymous. I filled out the form and hoo boy, did I have a lot of dirt on Grandma's driving habits. I had to use extra pages. I made sure to tell them she was driving one-handed and couldn't look around properly. Sure enough, Grandma got a letter from the DMV. They insisted she take the driver's test again, and required she receive a medical examination first. I knew damn well Grandma wouldn't see a doctor. And she didn't. Since she refused to comply with the DMV within the required time frame, they suspended her license. The suspension was indefinite, pending the medical exam and driver's test. Since she refused both, her license was never reinstated. Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.